I'm Wells Tower. I'm a fiction writer and a nonfiction writer, and I'm in Iowa City teaching for 3 weeks at the Writers' Workshop. Let's see. I think the one that I often get. I have a story in the book about Vikings, and I'm always asked, where did the Viking story come from? And it's an answer I've given so many times that it feels tedious to disgorge it. But it came from, there's a thing in the story, this very awful kind of surgery that happens in the story that was supposedly a real thing that Vikings did, that they would cut people up and pull their lungs out. And I was talking with a friend about that Viking practice, and we were just sort of observing that somehow it doesn't square with our notion of contemporary malehood. Like, it's just way too fastidious. And we were thinking, that if we'd been Vikings and somebody wanted to do this blood eagle thing, that we would have just been like, oh man, that's just such a hassle. The guy's already dead. Let's just, go back to the boat. And so that was where that story came from. It was just sort of about these reluctant Vikings. But that's the question I always get. I mean, it's not really all that painful to disgorge, these kind of pat paragraphs that you have, rattling around in your consciousness somewhere. It's very easy to do it. I mean, I think if I ever Googled myself or watched any interviews or anything, or read them, that would be an exercise in humiliation, just to see that I said the same thing a million times. But I don't ever look at any of that stuff. No, I mean, in my home town in North Carolina, I do rent a little office in town. And, for me, writing fiction, the main challenge is just getting away from the internet. So much of writing fiction, it's really just about showing up and sticking to a schedule. And I think particularly I'm working on a novel right now, and so much of it is just about, kind of clocking in and breathing life into the world every day. It's a much less, it feels much less kind of teleological than working on a short story, that you just show up and hang out with the characters. And so I do have an office in town. I sort of live a little bit out in the country. But yeah, I go in there every morning. I have a lot of friends who work in coffee shops. I could never do that. Sometimes, I guess occasionally I can work in a coffee shop. I mean, if I'm sort of typing up notes for a nonfiction piece or something, but fiction is it's so difficult to will oneself into the headspace where, you actually believe in this made up world and you can make a real emotional investment in characters. It's a very, it's a strange process that for me can only happen in solitude and relative quiet. Nonfiction helps. I do a fair amount of magazine work, and the thing that's great about it is I just get to go out into the world and meet people and listen to them talk. And so my hard drive is full of hundreds and hundreds of hours of transcription of conversations with people. And fiction is so difficult. The sort of craft and the artifice of it. And you can easily sort of get stuck in little eddies of your own technique. And for me, actually having all of this nonfiction material to draw on and to be able to look at an interview with somebody who might have something in common with the character I'm trying to write, to remind myself that these are real people. That's a good resource, the old nonfiction notes. I used to keep a list of no words on my hard drive, just words that I was using too much. What were those? Dispiriting was one. Wetly was one. I think maybe masticating might have been one. Skin diseases, skin rashes kept appearing. I had to get away from that. I guess the big thing is that I'm now doing a novel, my first, and that had sort of been the big challenge that had kind of been looming over me for years and may loom over me for years to come. But the wonderful thing about a novel is you can just sort of put anything you want in there. I mean, there's a wonderful capacity to it. But no, I mean, I've been pretty lucky. I feel like, most of what I've wanted to do, I've been able to, either in the fiction or the nonfiction. It's been a good life. In the most essential sense, writing fiction in particular really is, it is the practice of a kind of faith, that it's so much about just kind of showing up every day and going through the ritual of, maybe it's staring at the blank screen, but just trying to propitiate whatever it may be. Maybe it's spirits that, trying to put yourself into a headspace where people who don't exist suddenly seem real to you. And it's not simply, making stuff up, but working with materials of voice and narrative and character to try to say something useful and important about what it is to be a human being. And that's why it's so goddamn difficult. But it's, and for those of us who do it, I think we operate out of a conviction that this is the most amazing thing that human beings are capable of. That by making little black marks on a page, you can convey everything you need to know about anything that any human being has ever endured. And that's remarkable. And you might think it was a good thing that Newt had found a woman who would let him love her. And if she didn't exactly love him back, at least she would, in time, get to feeling something for him that wasn't so far from it. But what would you say about that crossing when the winds went slack and it was 5 long weeks before he finally fetched up home? Newt didn't hardly say a word to anybody, just held Mary close to him, trying to keep her soothed and safe from all of us, his friends. He wouldn't look me in the face, stricken as he was by the awful fear that comes with getting hold of something you can't afford to lose. After that trip, things changed. It seemed to me that all of us were leaving the high and easy time of life and heading into deeper waters. Not long after we got back, Jarf had a worm crawl up a hole in his foot and he had to give up raiding. Newt and Mary turned to homesteading full-time and I saw less of him. Just catching up over a jar turned into a hassle you had to plan 2 weeks in advance. And when we did get together, he would laugh and jaw with me a little bit, but you could see he had his mind on other things. He'd gotten what he wanted, but he didn't seem too happy about it, just worried all the time. It didn't make much sense to me then, what Newt was going through, but after Pila and me had our little twins and we put a family together, I got an understanding of how terrible love can be. You wish you hated those people, your wife and children, because you know the things the world will do to them, because you've done some of those things yourself. It's crazy-making, yet you cling to them with everything and close your eyes against the rest of it. But still, you wake up late at night and lie there listening for the creak and splash of oars, the clank of steel, the sounds of men rowing toward your home. So that's that.